Welcome to the WanderLearn-Podcast, and Sym Blanchard and I look into our crystal balls to assess global politics. Now, Sym listens to a lot of political podcasts when he's going on his long hikes across America and other parts of the world. He's just completed a long trek in Scotland. He's done one in Israel. He's been all over the place. And he's constantly listened to podcasts throughout the journey. And so I like to talk to him about global politics. So we start off the conversation with the 2024 election. We predict who are going to be some of the nominees for each political party, the two main ones, and then who might win the election. Then we move on to Ukraine and how that disaster will end. Then we discuss Israel and Palestine. Will that disaster ever end? Peace will arrive there as well. And finally, Taiwan. Will that erupt in war in this decade? Don't forget to become a patron at patreon.com/ftapon. You can pick up my latest chapters as I write them for as little as $2 a month. I really appreciate that because it helps make this podcast possible. Who do you think is going to be the nominee for the presidential election for both the Republicans and the Democrats?
Well, the odds look like Trump and Biden again, but...
Repeat.
Yeah, repeat. But
how confident
I kind of
are you?
hope somebody else comes in.
Hope is not a strategy. What's your percentage chance?
I'll say 60% for each.
That they will become the nominee.
Yeah.
So you're not that confident that Biden.
No.
So if Biden and or Trump does not become the nominee, you won't be that surprised.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
How about yourself? What do you think?
I think it's like 85% chance of Biden getting the nomination, and probably only about a 40% chance or 35% chance of Trump getting it.
Oh, interesting.
I'm far less confident that Trump will pull it off again. I think DeSantis, maybe some other dark horse.
Pence, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, somebody. Anyway, some person. There's always surprises in every election.
Yeah,
there's always something that kind of nobody saw coming, and that could be it. That could be it. That right now the presumed favorite does. I mean, Jeb Bush was the presumed favorite back in 2016, right? And then Donald Trump, he was the joke candidate. Nobody thought he was going to come in. And I remember even in Bill Maher, he had a female who's a female Republican. She's blonde hair. I can't remember her name. Anyway. That woman, she predicted on his show, 2 years before the election, Donald Trump will be the nominee, and the whole crowd erupted in laughter.
Me included.
No, but it's just the nominee she was predicting.
And
everybody laughed, and because it was such a ludicrous idea, it was unthinkable. So it's like strange things happen, and everybody thought Jeb Bush or something conventional will win.
And who thought Barack Obama would?
He was also exactly.
Dark horse.
So anyway, so that's why I'm predicting, and I think that Donald Trump fatigue will set in even among some of his supporters.
Oh, that's good.
His most passionate supporters, of course, will stay passionate.
Yeah,
but
that's only 20% maybe. So
yeah, but I mean, anyway, so that's my take. And who do you think is going to win the election then?
I hope. Hope. I'm going to say Biden.
Okay,
if it's Biden and Trump, then it'll be Biden.
Okay, sounds good. And then what about war in Ukraine? How do you predict that's going to end?
I don't know. I hope. I keep saying I hope, but I'm thinking that Ukraine does their offensive and then they go into the treaty, negotiate a treaty.
And what's the end of the treaty?
And I'm thinking that Russia gets to keep Crimea, and they probably keep some of the Russian lands, and Ukraine gets NATO, and they may get part of the land going into the Black Sea. There's a connection that would.
Well, who? Ukraine?
Ukraine.
Ukraine already has Odessa still.
Yeah.
They already have a way to the Black Sea. Odessa is a port.
Yeah, it's it's the connection to Crimea. Okay, what do you think?
I mean, if they need Black Sea access, they're going to have it through. They already have it in Odessa.
Yeah.
To me, the crown jewel is Crimea. That's
kind of.
That's going to be tough to get. I know. When you say Russian lands, you mean ethnically Russian.
Ethnically, yeah.
Or
that they've kind of held since 2014.
Correct. Yeah. No, I think that's a fair prediction. Although I agree that it's going to be really, really hard for them to get Crimea back. So it's probably they're going to have to give that up. I have a feeling. But a lot of people predicted that Ukraine was going to fall apart in like 3 days, or 3 weeks, and that we were wrong about that too. So. It's amazing how often the conventional wisdom is wrong.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, okay, what did you learn about traveling to Israel and Palestine in that zone there?
Their politics. I mean, you think we're divided here? They're so divided over in Israel. The conservatives, the ultra orthodox versus the more liberal Jews, and then versus the Arab Israelis versus the Palestinian West Bank people and the people in Gaza, and then the Hezbollah and in Lebanon, and and then what Netanyahu is trying to do with overrule the court, the Supreme Court.
If you were dictator of the world, how would you settle the differences? Like if you're the parent looking at Israel and Palestine and anybody else in that zone, and just say, okay, I'm the boss. This is the way it's going to work. This is the fair way I'm going to split you guys up.
Well, I try and get out of that as quickly as possible and create a democracy, but they don't have a constitution, and that's the Israel doesn't.
Israel doesn't have a constitution.
No. Okay. And the reason is if they did, then they'd protect the rights of the minority, which are the Arab Israelis, and so.
But I think that I always hear Israeli people saying exactly the opposite. They're saying that Arab Israelis have far more rights than Arabs do in Arab lands.
Yeah, that's true, but they don't have as many rights as the Israeli Jews.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not equal. I mean, they do have a lot more rights, and they're a lot better off.
I mean, because you're in Saudi Arabia, you may not be able to vote or do certain things, or I don't know what.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
apparently there's a lot of restrictions.
But I mean, for instance, garbage. There's so much trash all over, and it's horrible in the Arab Israeli towns. Their trash collection. I don't think that the Israeli government cares that much. So it's unequal. And but
you did not go to the West Bank.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, how was that? Did you just go through a little tiny piece, or?
A little tiny piece, Ramallah.
Okay.
And it was interesting.
It was the site of a battle there.
Yeah.
Like many years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know, 10 years ago or something.
All over. I mean, that place has been so contested. The Romans, the Greeks, the Assyrians, the
Chinese.
The French. I mean,
gotta blame the Chinese somehow.
Yeah, I found my fourth cousin 17 times removed was the King of Jerusalem. The Normans. With the Crusades. Anyway.
Do you ever foresee any kind of stability, peace in that zone?
I think so.
Let me guess. You hope so.
I hope so. I think their continued prosperity, and especially as the Arab Israelis get more rights, and they are, their prosperity increases, and I'm surprised they don't have a land bridge going between Gaza and the West Bank, to kind of connect those two. But there's so much corruption in the West Bank, and but it's interesting. In America, I know it's real difficult to talk about politics, especially when Trump was here. In Israel, they have real big differences, but you could talk about it, and you could, I could bring out my naive American assumptions, and they'd listen to it, and they go, but.
Give me an example of where you were corrected, or at least where you were told you were being naive, or for example.
When I would say, from an American, if I were to say America is a Christian nation, people would jump all over me. And
in the United States.
In the United States, and
it depends. If you said it in the South, people might agree with you.
Yeah,
in the Bible,
they might, but I wouldn't. I just feel really weird to say here's a religion, and this is the religion of the country. I mean, we have a separation of church and state, and in Israel, they say, this is a Jewish nation. Well, okay, so if you're Arab, if you're Muslim, then you're not part of the nation. Well, you really are. I mean, 40% of the nation is Arabs, so it's it kind of sets things up. But you got to realize they went through the Holocaust, and a third of their population was decimated, and they're invaded 5 times. So they have a good reason to set a homeland for the Jews, but that just causes a lot of issues with the Arabs, and there's been various solutions supposedly provided, and the Arabs have kind of turned down each one. So it's a hard situation.
Well, I mean, but the Arabs would probably say that, well, there's been plenty of solutions offers, but the Israelis keep turning down every one.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing, right? I mean, because usually both sides are proposing things, and Israel has to be saying no to certain proposals. The Arabs say, "Have a great idea. Let's get rid of your state."
Yeah.
And the Jews and the Israelis say, "No, we don't want to get rid of it." So we always ask Israel to just get rid of their state. What's the problem? And they always turn us down.
I know.
It's like we're being very reasonable. And, they're being turned down. And the Israelis say, we just asked them to just let us all, the greater Israel, to exist, and you guys go away. And we keep getting turned down. Imagine that.
Yeah.
It's like every proposal that we offer, it gets turned down. So anyway, I'm just saying there's two sides of the coin.
Exactly.
Taiwan. Last question.
Yeah.
In this decade, do you think that we're going to go to war?
Maybe later in the war, in the decade. I think China isn't there militarily, so maybe in another 5 or 10 years they'll find, they'll have enough power where they could take a shot at it. But right now, I don't think they do. But my hope again is that the people of Taiwan will vote to join China, and the reason they'll vote that way is that China will make it worth their while and say, oh, you're going to have these freedoms, and they give more freedoms to Hong Kong and to the
yeah, but until they give freedoms to Hong Kong, I don't think, if I'm a Taiwanese, I'm not going to believe it.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
and I don't see them going in that direction.
Yeah, they may. Yeah.
So,
not the way it looks now, but you never know.
They've only gone the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Since they took over Hong Kong.
Yeah, but they went the way of Mao, and that didn't work out, and then they went, the other way, and they progressed quite a bit. And
yeah, but now they're going back to the way of Mao.
Yeah, and they're paying for it in their economy, in their housing prices, and a lot of the high tech is not doing so well, or as well as it could if they were a little bit more open and a little less nationalistic.
So, what percent chance that we're going to see war in Taiwan in this decade?
40%.
All right. Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say 30%. I just don't. I think there's so much to lose.
Yeah.
So much to lose. It's a much bigger deal. I think that war is so much more dangerous than Ukraine and Russia, because you're going to have the butting heads of the United States and China, two biggest military and economic powers, and we're severely intertwined with their economies, both of us.
Yeah.
And there's so much to lose, even if one side wins. Okay, so China wins, Taiwan. Hey, what do you think the United States is going to do? Is there going to continue trade relations? No, we're going to give them the middle finger and say, fuck you and goodbye to all trade, and we're going to say goodbye to you for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to live independently. And that means losing trillions of dollars of trade revenue that China will lose from the United States. And of course, the United States will be hurting itself as a result. And if the United States wins and defeats China, well, that's going to be bad news too. So either way, it's just like, even if there's a clear, decisive winner, both sides are going to lose tremendously. Yeah. So it would be a foolish fight.
Well, we've gained so much with our trade. They've lifted 1 billion people out of poverty, and our we've kept inflation really low because of our non-protectionist policies until recently. Under Trump and Biden, they've kept that the protectionist stuff, and so
the protectionism will go up if we go to war.
Exactly,
by definition.
Yeah.
So I just don't. That's why I think it's a low probability, 30% chance. That it's going to happen. The only thing is that then, just if Xi Jinping says, okay, well, I want to leave a legacy of the being the leader of China who brings back Taiwan into our fold. One last thing I will say is that I was talking to a friend of mine who's been living in Taiwan, and he basically said culturally there's not much difference between the Taiwanese and the Chinese, and he lives in Taiwan, married to a Taiwanese, but he said at the same time, if you say that to a Taiwanese person, they will bristle.
Oh, yeah.
Just in the same way, if you say that Ukrainians and Russians are the same, a Ukrainian will go crazy. They'll say, no, we're different, And it's like, it's the same thing if you say the Canadians and Americans, U.S. citizens are the same. Canadian will say, no, we're not, we're totally different. But in the grand scheme of things, in all three of those examples, they really are. I mean, so similar. It's like Serbians and Croatians, they're pretty much the same. But you tell that to a Serbian or Croatian, they'll flip a lid. They're like, oh my God, I'm so different. But any outside observer will sit there and say, you Serbians, Croatians, or the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda. You're like, that's pretty similar. I mean, and yet we fight over these things.
Us and them.
Anyway. This is France Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn and to follow Sym Blanchard's adventure. I'll put a link in the show notes before. And thank you again, Sym. And it's always great to see you.
Thanks, Francis.
All right.
Awesome.
Take care.
And that ends this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we've talked about, go to WanderLearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is always my social media username. My website is ftapon.com. Do you want to leave me an anonymous voicemail where you can make a comment or ask a question? Then go to speakpipe.com/ftapon. Furthermore, if you'd like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. Now, 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at WanderLearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.